Now, the first thing in today's message that I need you to understand, I need this to be fully and completely and totally clear. Because if we don't have this one point, then the rest of the message will not make a whole lot of sense. And if we don't have this first point, in fact, we will always be discontented with church life. So the first thing to understand is that no church today, no church yesterday, no church tomorrow, no church ever is perfect. The church has always been run by broken, goofed up people. And that continues 2,000 years later and will continue 10,000 years from now. Until that final consummation that we spoke of in our hymn comes, when Christ is all in all, the church will be a broken, goofed up place. But this is crucial, as I say, because if you don't accept that, then you're never going to be happy in church. Because any church, let me tell you, I discovered quite a while back that if I ever found the perfect church, I would not be welcome. I wouldn't fit in because I'm a broken, goofed up person. There's a preacher, I won't make you do it, there's a preacher who had this congregation turn to each other and say, "There's something wrong with you." And then turn to the next person and say, "And me too." This is the reality of church life. No church has ever been perfect. Now, I often talk in glowing terms about the first church, the apostolic church, which was the church for the first 3 centuries after Christ. And it would give rise, there's a couple of terms. So we have the apostolic church. That was the church that was led by the apostles, the 12, and their followers for a few generations. From that would arise what is called the Constantinian church. And that is the church that arose under the Roman Emperor Constantine. And in that 4th century, the church dramatically changed and would be very, very different from the apostolic church for another 1,700 years. What happened 1,700 years later, today, is the rise of the new apostolic church and the death of the Constantinian church. I'll say more about that after. But first of all, we need to remember, no church is or will be perfect. But the imperfect church was built upon people's giftedness. That's what it was based upon and how it exploded in the way it did. First of all, it exploded under the gifts of the leaders, the apostles, or more specifically, the gift of proclamation. Peter preached, thousands came to Christ. The apostles were scattered throughout Jerusalem and into Judea. And when they spoke publicly, people joined. The church started on the foundation of proclamation. But the church was meant to be more than just a gathering of individuals who agreed with something that a preacher said. The church, in Jesus' eye, was to be a community. Under the gift of proclamation, we had individual believers. People converted by the word and then going off to live their life. Much like happened with John the Baptizer prior to Jesus' ministry. People came, they repented of their sins, they were baptized by him, and then they went on their way. Much the same thing was happening here in the beginning of the apostolic church. The preachers preached, people said, "Yes, I agree," and then went on their way. But the church was meant to be a community. And so, it would not take long before we would see the need for other gifts. And as so often happens, we see the needs in a moment of crisis. Oftentimes when things are going good, we don't necessarily see how things might need to change because they're going good. And if it ain't broke, you don't fix it, right? But in a moment of crisis, change must follow. The crisis point here was what we read in the 6th chapter of the book of Acts. The crisis point within an imperfect church is some people are not being treated fairly. These widows, the Jewish widows, are receiving food. The Greek widows are not. It is an inconsistency. It is an inequality in a church that claims that in Christ there is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female. And so, of course, the problem is taken to the 12. It is taken to the leaders, those who are out proclaiming the message. Now, I will admit, when I first heard Peter's response, when I first read this chapter from the book of Acts, my thought was, man, was this guy arrogant. He says, is it right for us to give up our work to wait on tables? And if we look at it in terms of preaching up here, waiting on tables down here, then yes, actually it is arrogant. But that's not where Peter was speaking from. Peter was speaking from here, preaching, waiting on tables, helping others. Here, not this, not a hierarchy. That hierarchy wouldn't arise for 300 years. Preaching from inequality. Should we abandon our giftedness to do something that is not our giftedness? And if we answered yes to that, which, by the way, the Constantinian Church has continually answered yes to, then we end up in a situation where everybody is frustrated. I knew of one church, it was a small country church, that believed in their hearts that their role was to raise money so that they could pay somebody else to do ministry. And they weren't that gifted at raising money. And every preacher they had was not gifted at doing everything that we call ministry. So can you imagine the frustration in that scenario? As people are essentially feeling like they're trying to pull a wagon that's on square wheels. The first church, as we see from the 6th chapter of the book of Acts, could have gone that way. If Peter had said, okay, we'll deal with this problem. And then, okay, we'll deal with the next. And, okay, we won't make that mission trip to Rome yet because we still need to deal with the group here and get them all in line together and happy and content with one another. The church would have died. It needed the gifts of everybody, not just a select few. The gifts of everybody. So that it could grow. And so Peter says, it's not right for us to give up our calling to deal with this issue. Find 7 full of spirit, full of wisdom. And we will commission them to do their job. Now, it's important to note there, the apostles didn't hang around and watch over them and manage them to make sure that they did everything right. The apostles said, we're going to lay hands on them and then we're going to go do what we're supposed to do while they do what they're supposed to do. And the community continued to grow. Not because the community had a gifted preacher, not because the community had a good chair of the board, but because everybody was called upon to share their gifts together in this great puzzle piece. And people looked at church members and said, wasn't a hierarchical care. That, well, all you need this, so I will give it to you. No, it was a, we are in this together. And we will move together. Now, the move, back to point number one, was not perfect. But it was glorious. People saw it and said, I want that. Now, what happened in the 4th century was the Emperor Constantine brought together all the bishops, declared the state of Rome friendly to the message of Christianity. That would lead to Christianity becoming the state church. And once that happened, gifts were no longer necessary because the church mirrored government. It mirrored the worldly institution that Constantine led. And so Constantine essentially created a church in his own image. Does that make sense? Life was now different. Everybody was a Christian, whether you wanted to or not. Just plain and simple. You are a part. And it became hierarchical. So you have this person at the top, and you have this person below, and filtering on downward. I've seen that in so many Christian churches today, so many mainline churches. Someone's at the top, and it moves hierarchically from there. And those on the bottom are on the bottom. They're just kind of there. They're there to uphold, not to actually be an integral part of. Now this is fine, and it worked for 1,700 years. Well, probably actually just over 1,600. It worked, but it couldn't last. It couldn't last with the changes in Western culture. Now, because of this, I'm not going to judge the Constantinian Church. It had its place in history, and I need to be kind to history. Because I know that 1,700 years from now, they're going to look at us and say, wow, did they really do that? I get that. So I got to be kind to history. However, things have changed. We see it all around us. We are in the crisis point. Within the United Church of Canada, our denomination, we are closing over one church a week. We are in crisis point. And what we see here is by and large the mainline church diminishing. A mainline church that is built upon hierarchy, that is built upon human power. And what is taking its place are flat institutions. So we have mirrored the institutions of our world. There is rising now communities that are based in the Spirit. They do not mirror worldly institutions, instead are seeking to be a reflection of the kingdom to the world. 300 years from now, it'll be something different. But right now, we are seeing the rise of the new apostolic church. We are in crisis. And it's not a bad place to be. It's not a place you want to stay forever, but it's not a bad place to be, because it can give you a shake and make you look, what do we have? What do we have? What are we missing? Who are we missing? Kind of like being at a large banquet with all your family, a big, large family gathering. And you look, when you're sitting there, you look around and you ask the question, who's missing? New apostolic churches ask the same question. Who's missing? What gifts are we missing? How have we helped people discover their giftedness, name their giftedness, and use their giftedness? So we get caught in trying to ensure that what we have continues. But giftedness means being open to new possibilities. I'm sure I've shared with most of you before. Many of you have heard this. One of the first small group ministries, gift-based ministries, at one of North America's largest churches, Willow Creek Community Church in Chicago, came about when a bunch of weekend warrior car fixers, guys who just like to work in their garage on Saturday and Sunday, were brought together and commissioned to go get junked cars, rebuild them, and give them away to single mothers in Chicago who didn't have means to purchase a vehicle. Who would have ever thought before that the idea of fixing a car could actually be a ministry? But it was a talent that these guys had. Most of them didn't use it as a profession. They just worked on their own vehicles on the weekend. But they were brought together in a new way. This is the New Apostolic Church. Seeing new possibilities. And seeing the gifts that people have that can lead us into new possibilities. Actually, let me change that because that's backwards. It's not seeing the need. It's seeing the gift and discovering how to use it. Now, there are many here who use their gifts. We have people in our administration who truly have a gift of administration. Thank God they're there. Thank God, because if it was left to those of us who don't have the gift of administration, well, you can think about the possibilities yourself. We have people who have those gifts. We have people who are gifted at helping. Behind the scenes workers, people who don't want to really necessarily be seen. They don't feel comfortable in front of a crowd, but they're working behind the scenes to make sure that everything's in place and everything's moving smoothly. I'm thinking about the small army of volunteers that we had in here over this week, working their tails off. It was amazing to watch. And the joy that they had working together. See, and here's a crucial part. It's about putting the pieces together. In the first service, I asked somebody who, I laughed that I hadn't seen, I saw her more over this past week than I have in 9 years. And I asked her, now, did you have a good time? And she said, oh, it was a great time. I loved doing it. It's wonderful. How would you have felt if you had to do it alone? And her response was, no way. Other gifts are needed, other talents are needed, people are needed together. This is the essence of Christian community. This is the essence of a gathering of Christ together, brothers and sisters together. Now, it doesn't mean that it's perfect, and it doesn't mean we'll always get along, and it doesn't mean it's happy, happy, joy, joy, 24/7, 365. But what it means is that we, as a gathering of Christ, are offering an opportunity. Are offering an opportunity to each other. And are showing the world another way. The Constantinian model is dead. One of my recent favorite examples of that, they told me the date in the first service, 1992 here in Ontario. Sunday shopping became law. Or became legal, not law, but lawful. And as that was happening, as we're coming into that, the churches, by and large, especially those based on the Constantinian model, yelled and roared and stamped their feet and said, no, this cannot happen. It happened. Essentially, our culture ignored us because we were not as relevant as we were 50 years ago when what we said did matter. So the world ignored us, Sunday shopping became a reality. Now here was an opportunity to live into something different and new. But what happened was most of us, and I'm not judging, you will find me sometimes in Walmart on a Sunday afternoon, I will admit, but we went shopping. By and large, the church went shopping. After we had said, no, that cannot be, we followed the world. Rather than saying, okay, this is what the world is doing, but let's us do something different. Let's figure out how to establish an incredible joy in worship. Let's go back to maintaining fellowship after worship. How many people here would take, now after worship, and get together with friends and family through the afternoon, have lunch together and spend time? No? people. Wow, I am surprised. Although that's what I like how one hand, right? Yeah, me. There was an opportunity. Instead of us heading off our own ways and going to Walmart, we could have stayed together and had lunch together and spent time together. Maybe in teaching, capturing our Methodist roots of having all-age Sunday school outside of worship. Maybe just in playing games together and having fun together and getting to know each other deeper. We had an opportunity, but we didn't take it. We had an opportunity to show the world something different. We had an opportunity to show the world giftedness. And ask the world to join us. To say, yeah, you can go Sunday shopping if you want. But you know what? That's kind of like having a fast food cheeseburger when what we're offering is a full 5-course meal. See what I mean? We had an opportunity. The Constantinian model didn't allow that. The apostolic model does. Because it's about us being together, pieces of the puzzle working together to share love